What's good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one I want to talk about what's going on with the overall market and break down what happened to SPY today, and also Tesla, the QQQ, Nvda, and many other stocks, and break down what news came out and why the market is looking this way, and some very important levels to watch for tomorrow to determine if the market will continue dropping like a rock or if the market could try to bounce. I'm going to try my best to be very unbiased in this video as well, and then talk about what on earth we're seeing. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $50 cash reward. The offer ends in 2 weeks, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, today was a very, very crazy day. If you were watching the market today, we basically were respecting this falling wedge on SPY, and I had it drawn out very differently before. And the market was respecting the trend lines for most of the day. Then all of a sudden, we started selling off very aggressively during the last 2 hours, and it got absolutely crazy at the very end because SPY kept continuing to break and break. So we had this new structure that developed. We had this new channel where SPY would just continue to remain bearish. And as this perpetuated, SPY ended up just not really budging. We didn't really see buyers step in. It just kept selling and breaking critical supports. So now that we broke below 438, we went down to 437.5. That broke too. 436.5 also broke. So that's not looking good whatsoever for the bulls. And this chart looks very, very bearish as we sold off on relatively high volume at the very end of the day. You could see the volume got very, very high at the end, and we started to see this increase in the selling pressure as sellers became more aggressive. We also started to see high sell orders at the very end as the algos adjusted near the very end of the day, and it didn't really look natural to me. That wasn't really something that we typically see or we oftentimes see, even during a bear market. It wasn't like normal, right? This was pretty insane. It was a very big shift in the algos, and something had to have happened. Either there's some kind of news coming, either someone found out something and we're going to find out later on what it is, or it could just be straight up the bears attacking very hard after the Fed did not announce any rate cuts or anything like that, which the market could have been hoping for. There could be all sorts of reasons. But the bottom line is, I just want to talk about these levels now and talk about this in a very unbiased manner, regardless of whether or not some new news comes out or not. What should we be watching for? But now let's break down some other important factors. So looking at the data, we're seeing the Dow tumble down, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ composite all dropping very, very hard. This is the third straight session of major downside as the market is continuing to weaken. If you look at the Dow, it's just continuing to drop really hard. The 10-year Treasury yield is also continuing to pump. That's very important because of the Fed adjusting their policy. And this could be leading us to a more difficult environment with higher interest rates than initially expected. So with the yields going up and the dollar holding up, that's not a good sign for the markets. The overall sentiment in the market used to be greedy. We were so greedy before, now we're becoming neutral. We're about to become fearful. It is not looking good for the bulls. Now, market momentum is becoming way less greedy, getting very, very close to our 125-day moving average. This is once again a useful tool that's going to show us how the market is performing. And right now, it's continuing to slow down, showing signs of fear and weakening momentum. Same thing is going on with the stock price strength index. This is also dropping as well. The McClellan volume summation index is dropping. We're seeing less greed as well. And then the put and call options positioning is more fearful. We're starting to see higher put to call ratios going up and up and up as the shorts are piling in, and the market is just weakening over and over again, becoming a lot more fearful. And now market volatility went up like crazy compared to before. We're well above the 50-day moving average for the VIX. That is extremely fearful now in terms of the level it's at relative to before. Now, looking at this, I didn't really see much of an update on the overall target rate probabilities. This is still showing 11.5% as the probability for the next rate hike. It still is very possible this could start going up higher as we approach the date. In order for that to happen, the market is going to be dropping more, pricing in another Fed rate hike. That is very, very possible. If that's the case, we have to be watching this to see if that's what the market is intending on doing. If that happens, that's going to be bearish. If not, we're just going to be waiting to see if anything else happens. Now, in terms of economic data, let me just remind you, there's nothing much coming out for tomorrow, nothing at all that's too significant except for some oil data. Nothing else. I just want to make that clear. And then finally, for earnings, I think Ross is coming out like right now. Then we just have a couple of others like Xbong and just a few others, but nothing too big in terms of earnings. So now all this data and earnings are going to be cooling off between now and tomorrow. Nothing much is going to be coming out. Now it's going to be more about the charts. How are things looking? Looking at SPYs continuing to slide in the after hours. Futures, ES, they're all continuing to drop already. And once again, it's pretty insane, pretty wild. So what are some important levels to watch for on SPY? Well, now that the bears are gaining control and fear is really driving this market, we could see even more capitulation. However, I just want to make it clear there are going to be some important levels to watch for it to help you really understand whether or not the market's going to do that. So on SPY, I'm going to go on the 4-hour time frame so you can see both sides. Right now, we're approaching some very critical levels. On SPY, we're currently sitting at about 435.8 in the after hours at the time I'm recording this. If you want to become bullish, you could argue that the market's so oversold. We need to see Apple and etc. balance, but Apple is just continuing to sink as well. Apple is playing a big role in sinking the markets. If you want to turn bullish on SPY, it has to make its way back up to 438 and hold that. If you can manage to do this, there is some hope for it to get back to 440 plus. That is going to be your trigger. You have to be watching 438. That's going to be a very important level for tomorrow. And if you're bearish on SPY, if you think the market's going to sink, okay, you want to see this basically break below 435 and then break below 434.8. We have a lot of touches around this area. We actually have some support here. 434.8, excuse me, that level right about there. We're going to be watching that. If that breaks, if we break this support, that is it. SPY is going to get this big drop because we have this imbalance down here. It's going to come all the way down to 431.5. That's going to be your next level. If we do end up breaking, it's going to be a big drop, guys. So make sure you're ready for that just to be safe. And if that fails us, then we have like this 430 area. We're going to likely see some buyers step in though, because we have major support here between 430 and 431.5. So some buyers should step in around here before we continue. And if somehow, maybe in the future for the next few weeks, if we do break below 430, like later on, there's not that much support holding up the market. There's not much support holding it up from there. 425 could come quickly, and then we have these unfilled gaps at like 420. We could see 420 really fast if we end up breaking below that. So just want to warn you guys about that. Things are not looking that great. Could we also be forming kind of like a giant head and shoulders? I'm not going to say that this is certain, but you could argue that we have kind of like a left shoulder here, and then our head is forming here. Maybe a right shoulder could be forming. Who knows? Right? We have to come down to 431.5 balance and come right back down. Who knows? Right? I'm not promising that. I don't want to talk about anything that long into the future. But for now, let's just look at the next level. In case you are wondering, that is a possibility, but not a guarantee. So for tomorrow, what is more likely though? I went over the bullish case and the bearish case, guys, right? The bullish case is us breaking 438, then having the potential to go back up to 440. The bearish case would be us breaking all the way down below 434.8 and coming down this next level down here to 431.5. What seems more likely? Well, honestly, guys, we just sold off without much of a bounce. So I think there's a chance we could see the market make an attempt to rebound. We could get a backtest of like 436.5, but it's not looking too good. It looks a lot more bearish. Looks like the bears have the edge. We actually broke this support right here. We're just not holding up nicely, in my opinion. And we're continuing to break down. It looks like the odds favor. It's more probable that the market's going to break below 434.8 and come down to 431.5. That seems a lot more likely now looking at this structure. There hasn't been a change in the market structure. If anything, it's just getting weaker. So that seems a lot more probable. If we get a bad piece of news in the morning tomorrow, that could happen, or maybe later on today, who knows? But it just seems more likely that it's going to break. But just to be safe, watch for your confirmation. I just want to make that as clear as possible. There is some hope for the bulls because of how oversold the market is to try to get back above 438 to hold it, but it's looking a little bit less likely. It looks more likely like the market's going to sell off more. On Tesla stock, we're going to be looking at this one now very carefully. Tesla's not looking too good either. Unfortunately, I readjusted this because of this channel. Actually, I did not readjust this that much. This was a different ticker. I kept this the same since the beginning of the day, this entire channel. And if you look at Tesla, okay, we held this channel right here near market close. Then after the market ended up closing, during the after hours, Tesla has broken below the channel, come down pretty hard to 216. The next level to watch for on Tesla is going to be, when it comes to support, we have 215, 212. There's some support there. Then we have this like 209 to 207 zone, 205, and then all the way down to 200 after that. Those are some supports on Tesla. For resistance, you're going to be watching this channel around this like 218 area, 221, 225. Followed by that, we have like this 228 area, then 230. What seems more likely for Tesla? Okay, I went over like the more bullish and bearish scenarios. What's more likely for Tesla based off this trend is Tesla tries to rebound and retest like 218, possibly 220. I'm not too sure about 220. Then it just rejects, and we just continue selling to 215, maybe even 212. 209 could even come depending on how aggressive we are. It looks very weak in my opinion. It's just continuing to sell off very hard. We'll see if there's an attempt to bounce tomorrow. I'm just going to not be too certain as the market's becoming more fearful. The real bounce may happen a little bit later thanks to Nvda, because Nvda is holding up quite decently compared to the market. It's still trying to hold its channel. It's not looking that bad, but it's also forming this flag. So I think this thing could still get a breakout next week approaching its earnings. Not too sure about it happening tomorrow. And I believe that it may just remain trading sideways and just continue to downtrend a little bit more and get very close to these lower levels. We could see like 428 or so, much lower levels continue to come just for a little bit longer before this thing gets ready to break out, for this flag to finally play out. We're still waiting for it. It needs some time before earnings come out. And I think that this could play a very big role next week in helping the market reverse. But for now, right, it's not next week yet. There could still be lots of sideways price action in this channel that continues going into tomorrow. That's what these technicals are suggesting. Not really doing anything too fun. So you're going to be watching this channel very carefully. Don't forget, we have some resistance around this 433 area. Then we have like 436, 442 above that. And for supports, right now, it's holding this up as around this 430 zone. If that does break, I mean, there is a possibility of it breaking a little bit below this to like 425. That is on the table too. If 425 breaks, then we could see like 420. But I don't really see it tanking that hard just yet until we finally break one of these levels. So for now, let's just assume it's going to stay in this range unless it breaks one of these levels, one of these trend lines, and then we'll see what happens from there. For now, it's holding up, so just watch it all very, very carefully. I also want to add that for the triple Q, and I'm going to transition to like Webull after this because it's a lot quicker after this part. But I just want to mention that the triple Q is actually at some major support right now. 357 is some major support on it. So we're going to be watching to see if that could hold or not on the 4-hour time frame. 357 is going to be a key support. We're going to be watching to see if this could bounce or not, because historically you could see where this yellow line is. I know it's a little hard to see, but this is where we got a historical bounce here. This is where we got our breakout. This is a very strong support on it. If it breaks, we're going to fill this gap down to 355 and the market's going to sink lower. Aapl breaking down could cause that to happen, so be very careful. Aapl is still very oversold right now, so just be very careful too. We're going to be watching to see if this can get some kind of rebound. If it does, you're going to be watching 360. 360 breaks, and there's like 361.5, 362, 363, and the list goes on. In my opinion, it looks relatively weak, not looking that great. It looks like it's going to just like see some buyers step in, retest, the very high 350s, and then make its way back down again. Maybe retest 357. We'll see if it breaks. If it does break, that's going to be a very bearish signal. It's going to come all the way down to the mid 350s. That looks more probable, but just to be safe, we're going to be watching because this is super strong support historically for the triple Q. Now, anyways, for the other part of this video, I'm going to transition to Webull and go a lot quicker about the other stocks. I don't want to spend too much time on them. So on Aapl, basically, Aapl is not looking that great. I mean, we just hit 173 just right now. It was holding up for most of the day, then it just started sinking really hard. So if you're bullish, you want to see it make its way back up above 174. If it holds above that, we could see this thing push for 175.28 and break that to get back to 177, but it's looking less likely. The bearish case is going to be 172.5, 171, then 170 flat, followed by 168. What looks more probable? It looks like it may rebound to 174 if it rejects and starts sinking. If it breaks below 173, you're going to be watching it come down to 172.5 and maybe even 170. It is still looking very weak on the 4-hour time frame and also on the daily time frame, still looking weak. The 4-hour is not too oversold, but the daily is quite an oversold territory. But that doesn't guarantee anything. It still is looking weak, so just be open-minded. There's no sign of a bounce on it yet. If it keeps sinking, watch our 200 EMA on the daily chart around 168. Finally, we're going to go down to like AMD. AMD may move very similar to Nvda. It's continuing to downtrend. We're going to be watching this thing get very close to where its 200 EMA happens to be. I'm going to be watching 100 as support if it continues to break below 102.5. 100 is going to be the next level to 98. That's going to be very key. For resistance, watch 105, then 107. What seems more probable? Maybe a rebound to 105. If it rejects off 105 to 107, it could start sinking down closer to 100. If not, then we're going to be watching to see how well it could hold. Netflix looks really bearish right now, not looking too good. If 401 ends up breaking, 400 is going to be our support. The next level is going to be 393 for Netflix. We also have this unfilled gap at 377, but I'm not too worried about that until we break 393. And then it has a nice head and shoulder structure, so it's looking more bearish to me. We could be watching for the 393 very, very soon. Looks more bearish. Make it a rebound, retest like 410, and then come back down. Looks more bearish to me overall. NASDAQ is not looking too good. It made an attempt to bounce, but now it's coming down. It's actually approaching support right here. It's at support. So we're going to be watching to see, does it get a rebound? It's about 13,500. I'm sorry, 13,400 and then end up continuing to drop? Or does it just keep dropping because the daily candle looks weak? It looks more bearish to me, so the odds do favor it eventually coming down to fill the gap down to 12,000, like 600 area, 12,400. That could also come later on. It looks more bearish, so we're going to be watching this very carefully. The same thing can be said about SPX, not looking too good, continuing to look relatively weak. Going to be watching lots of these gaps down here, and I'm going to be watching this key support around 40. Excuse me, sorry guys, 43.25. That's going to be another very, very important level. And then besides that, on the VIX, we're going to be watching, see if this could break out. Can we see this thing break above 18? If it manages to break that, it could continue going. If it breaks above 200 EMA, then that could be it. I think it may test this around 18.4 very, very soon. If that's the case, we could see something very, very different. For the dollar index, we're going to be watching if this thing continues to break out. If it keeps breaking out, it has the potential to get very close to about 103.5. If that breaks, 104 is a possibility. It's looking more bullish. That's a bearish signal for the markets. Same thing with all these other tickers. If you look at Google, it's looking relatively it's holding up all right, but it has this big gap down here, which makes me a little concerned. We're going to be watching 128. It's going to retest this tomorrow, most likely. If that breaks, we have 127.8 to be tested. We could see some downside as the 10-year treasury yield is pumping. Amazon is also continuing to downtrend now. It actually broke below 133. It's currently holding this previous resistance becoming support. If that fails us, you're going to be watching the 4-hour 200 EMA around 132. That's going to be our next target. That's also where this imbalance happens to be, around 128. So watch 132, then 128. Meta is not looking too good. Big drop. It just hit 283. If it keeps sinking, 280 is going to be a key zone. Then we also have support around like 277. We could see levels like that. It is very oversold though. So I'm going to be hoping it could bounce. Hopefully it tries to get above 288. If it could hold above 288, we're going to be watching 290 plus. If it continues to sell off, then it's not going to be a good sign. But anyways, guys, I just want to thank you all so much for listening. I mean, it is what it is with the market. I know the market's looking weaker than before. This sell-off is pretty extreme near the second half of the day. And when it happens, we'll see if there's any news that comes up later on that could, cause more selling or not. And we will see what also happens as the market reacts to some very, very important levels. But until I see you guys again, please take care, remain calm, cool, and collected. Watch for confirmation, watch your support and resistance levels. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright. And peace out.